Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. Today we will be presenting on the topic Unlock Advanced Security with Bitdefender EDR. My name's Ron Jarvis, Sales Director at Blue Chip. Today I'll be joined by Michael Reeves, Cloud Security Architect from Bitdefender. I'll start off with a little bit of housekeeping and let you know that today's presentation will be recorded. We will also be taking questions at the end of the presentation. If we could have you type in your questions in the GoToWebinar panel, this can be done during the presentation or at the end during the Q&A time. We'll also have Neil Chen, Sales Engineer from Bitdefender, here to help us on some of the curly questions, if there are some in the Q&A as well. Probably I'll give a little bit of background with Blue Chip and Bitdefender partnership. It came about over 18 months ago, pretty much during the lockdown time that we've had with what's been going on. But that certainly hasn't stopped us, and it's been a pleasure to be able to bring a best of breed solution to our channel partners and to your clients. In the time that we have been working with Bitdefender, they've been able to help a lot of our resellers fill in gaps in the overall cybersecurity portfolio. It's certainly been a key component conforming around, when now we're talking about Essential 8s and a lot of compliance and regulations that are coming in. So it's certainly been able to, for our partners, help them expand and hold on to existing business, but also grow new business. Together with Bitdefender, we're looking at and working on simplifying and quoting the renewals process and the MSP billing platform. Certainly help doing business easy and visible. So with all that out the way, I now have the pleasure to introduce our speaker, Michael Reeves from Bitdefender. So with that, I will pass on to you, Michael, and let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for your time. Good morning to everybody. I'm actually based out of Arizona. So it is 5 o'clock my time, but we live in a virtual world, so it doesn't really matter where you are in the globe. And so I send you greetings from the US, and hope you're having a wonderful day there so far. So my name is Michael Reeves. I'm a cloud security architect by trade. I have recently taken on the role of our technical director here for the Bitdefender MSP team. And it's my privilege to talk to you today about basically, EDR for your endpoints and specifically how Bitdefender approaches this particular space. And so I've titled this talk, Detection, Protection, Response, and Security Hardening across all your endpoints. And hopefully you'll see why Bitdefender is growing so fast in the market right now, and specifically, hopefully you'll see the value that Bitdefender Gravity Zone can bring to your particular environment. Again, I welcome any questions. We're a very open company, and so looking forward to hearing what your questions are at the end of the conversation here today. But let's go ahead and dive in and get started. So when you think about endpoint security, I'd like to start with kind of where we are in the market. And what we see today in the market is there's just a fear of breach and business disruption out there. Ransomware cases are skyrocketing. I read a report here in the US. The US government tracks financial payouts in the form of ransomware, specifically using Bitcoin. And the payouts for 2021, just from January to June for ransomware, have eclipsed the 2020 numbers. And so it's a really huge problem that businesses of all sizes are struggling with. And why they're struggling is that legacy endpoint protection is really failing in this area. And the reason why, it's from an architectural perspective, they're just inefficient against kind of 0 days in advanced attacks, as well as the malicious actors are becoming very automated. And so you have very sophisticated malware and breach events that can be brought to bear against businesses. And if you've got endpoint architecture that is, a decade old, it becomes very, very problematic to stop more advanced malware today. And then
Hi.
yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
Michael. We can't see your screen now. It's
Oh,
blank.
wow. Okay, hold on a second. That's interesting. All right, let me see.
Yes.
Let's try this. How's
Thank
that?
you. Yep.
Is that
All
working?
good. Thank you. Yep.
Yay. Okay, well, thanks for letting me know. I appreciate that. So, when you think about this, you also think about so what's happened over the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years, maybe a little bit longer, but the last 5 to 6 years, you've had EDR vendors that have kind of come into the forefront. And what the market is finding out is that a lot of these EDR solutions are very complex. They require a ton of human resources to manage. Administrators suffer from alert fatigue. And also you have a lot of the traditional EDR vendors that really struggle with fileless-based attacks or PowerShell-based attacks. And so you have this inefficient EDR which overwhelms your human resources, coupled with legacy endpoint protection, and it becomes a very problematic situation to really defend customers' environments against automated, very sophisticated attacks nowadays. You couple that with another challenge that we have in the industry is that there's just a cybersecurity skill gap. You have tools that are requiring advanced skill sets, and you have limited human resources to be able to fill those gaps. And so it's very, very challenging for businesses to find cybersecurity professionals, and then when you employ them, to be able to keep them. And so EDR alert fatigue becomes problematic because you just don't have enough human resources to fill the need that these EDR tools are generating. And it's just a really challenged situation. And then finally, when you think about the market, you've got an increasing number of tool sets from a lot of different vendors that are just not integrated. So it falls upon the partner community, it falls upon customers, it falls upon system integrators to try to create integration to fill in these non-integrated tools. And it just creates a very challenging situation from a security perspective. So I want you to think about endpoint security, and I like to keep things simple, because I think if you can take a complex problem and you can simplify it down to its essence, I think you're onto a good architecture when it comes to endpoint security. And I would argue there are really 3 critical pillars, if you will, in the endpoint security business. The first one is in the area of prevention. And what I mean by that is automated tools. This is your endpoint security software needs to be really, really effective in stopping 99% of advanced attacks in your environment. So you have to have a really effective prevention layer that really helps take the burden off of the second area of endpoint security, and that is your human resources. So you've got prevention layer, that's your automated layer of security. Then you've got your detection and response, which is where the humans come into this equation. And the challenge with that area is that you've got a ton of alerts, and you've got people that are trying to determine, number one, the correlation between these alerts, and also secondly, critical is this alert benign or is it malicious in nature? And so you've got an incredible overhead that is driven in this particular area by poor efficacy. You just overwhelm the human resource aspect of your security architecture. And then finally, I would argue there is a third element for endpoint security that just does not get enough attention nowadays. And this is the area of system hardening. What I mean by this is reduce the attack surface in your customer's environment to make it more difficult for malicious actors to gain a foothold in your environment. So if you take these three areas, system hardening, in other words, reduce the attack surface, you combine this with high efficacy in the endpoint prevention layer, and then you have really simple, easy to use, guided detection and response for your human resources to be able to deal with these incidents, you've got a really effective solution. What you find nowadays is you've got lack of integration, because in many customer environments, these are three different security tool sets that are being used and they're inefficient in working in conjunction with each other to really give you a great security architecture. So with this information, I would say there are three critical requirements of endpoint security when you boil it down. Number one, you got to be very effective in the prevention layer. This is essential because it reduces the number of incidents that your staff has to deal with, and it reduces breaches because nothing is more quick to respond to incidents than your automated security layer or your prevention layer. The second, you need, in the area of detection and response, you need a correlated kind of 360-degree view of your incidents that your human resources can very quickly identify whether an incident is malicious or benign and be able to very quickly take action as a result of that. And you couple that with the area of reducing the attack surface by analyzing the risks in your environment and being able to reduce those risks by identifying misconfigurations or user vulnerabilities or application vulnerabilities. So those three areas, I would argue, are your three critical requirements of a great endpoint security architecture in this modern day 2021 and beyond. So let's look at these three and look at how Bitdefender kind of plays in these arenas. So in the area of endpoint prevention, Bitdefender has a couple of technologies that are built into our stack. The first one is what we call HyperDetect. HyperDetect is part of an add-on to our MSP suite called Advanced Threat Security. And what HyperDetect really is the ability to tune our machine learning engine, the Bitdefender machine learning engine, per threat vector. So you can be very aggressive when it comes to certain types of attack vectors while reducing the number of false positives because you don't have to set the settings aggressive across the board. And then you determine the action. What this helps you is with ransomware, you can be very aggressive. With exploits, fileless-based attacks, script-based attacks, really helps you provide maximum detection without a ton of false positives. And this also delivers full visibility into your suspicious activities. So this is one area where Bitdefender helps you be more effective in the prevention layer. How do you do this? You set the aggressiveness level per attack vector. You determine the action that you want to take for that given threat vector. So whether it is moving files to quarantine or blocking suspicious network traffic, HyperDetect helps you to do that. And that's part of our advanced threat security solution. The second area of advanced threat security is what we call our Sandbox Analyzer. This is remote detonation of various unknown objects in the Bitdefender cloud environment, away from your customers' environments. This helps you prevent things like very advanced type malware packers, unknown packers. Any unknown threat can be identified and assigned a risk score, and then be able to allow the Bitdefender engines to take actions based upon the policy settings that you set in each policy. It uses machine learning. You basically can run it in two different blocking modes. One is called monitoring mode, which is what I call simultaneous detonation. It means there's no impact to the end user. The end user clicks on an object, they have access to that object. At the same time, Bitdefender Endpoint is uploading that object to the cloud, detonating it, and determining the exact nature of that particular threat, or if it's benign, determine that that object is benign. It provides a near real-time verdict and really takes the guesswork out of a machine learning type engine, where you can turn unknown threats into known threats very, very quickly using this type of technology. So that's the prevention layer. Let's talk about detection and response. This is where Bitdefender really, really takes visibility to the next level. Bitdefender, out of the box, correlates incidents across your environment, providing you kind of a 360 view of incidents. This is a particular incident you're looking at on your screen, where you've got an email being delivered to a couple of endpoints. It looks like Bob is the one who opened up that particular endpoint or that particular packer. That packer then connected out to an external IP address along with the local domain controller, did some reconnaissance, and now you have two other endpoints that are affected by this particular incident. All of this is out of the box behavior for Bitdefender EDR. We also allow you to drill into each one of these objects in that screen, where you can determine the exact workflow of that particular incident. You can isolate hosts, you can open up consoles to isolated hosts, you can kill processes, quarantine files, add files to block lists or various objects. And let's say that this is benign. This is a benign process. Your technicians can very quickly determine whether or not this is benign, and then notice on your screen, they click a box called Add File to Exception List, and they can whitelist it in 3 clicks. So very, very quickly, you can make your human resources that are performing EDR functions very, very efficient in not only being able to determine whether an incident is malicious or benign, and then being able to very quickly take action associated with that. We also offer attack forensics as well. So pre-post compromise, we map all of this in the MITRE framework, if you're familiar with the MITRE framework. So you can see first contact, you can see local execution, you can see obfuscation, you can see all of the phases of a particular attack, and really provides you root cause analysis. All of this is done out of the box with Bitdefender EDR. And there was MITRE did basically a study earlier this year. So these are the results of earlier this year. Bitdefender did very, very well in this attack evaluation. You can read about it online. It used the Carbonac Fin malicious packers, things like that, and just launched attacks against a bunch of different EDR vendors' products. Bitdefender was part of that study. We were highlighted in really 2 areas. The first one is exciting for most people. That's in the area of detections. Bitdefender did better than anyone across the board as far as determining what should be detected in this particular malware event. Bitdefender did really well. Number two, what's really exciting to me as a security professional is that it was highlighted that if you look down below, I highlighted a couple of words. Bitdefender stands out for enabling efficient security operations, and here's the key verbiage: reducing alert fatigue by providing, quote, analytic insights for 96% of all detections. Let me explain to you what this means. You're on a Safari, and what a detection is, let's say you're in the back of a truck, you're on a Safari, you're looking out in a field. What a detection is in the field are a bunch of gray dots. You see something in the field, but you don't know what they are. They're just gray, okay? That is what a detection means. What an analytic insight, however, is that's a kangaroo, that's a lion, that's a cheetah. You can know exactly what that object is, and MITRE calls that analytic insights. Bitdefender shows you exactly what that object is for 96% of all of our detections. Again, making your teams very efficient when it comes to EDR. So let's talk about security assessment and hardening your environment, really reducing the attack surface. Bitdefender calls this endpoint risk analytics. It's built into Gravity Zone. And what this is it, you think about risks in your environment, whether they be application vulnerabilities or operating system misconfigurations or browser or networking types of misconfigurations. This allows a very large attack surface for these automated malicious actors to be able to take advantage of these. And so what Bitdefender does is we go out and our agent by default can scan the environment for these particular vulnerabilities and then show you exactly what those vulnerabilities are, and so that you can take action to remediate those vulnerabilities. You know, a lot of different forms of ransomware can be blocked with just simple configuration changes. In fact, here in the US, we've had a number of different very high profile ransomware attacks. Every single one of them, they've affected our food distribution industry, they've affected our power industry. Every single one of those ransomware attacks could be blocked with a single configuration change, and I'll show you what that configuration change is. Notice over on the right-hand side where it's example configuration analytics rules. The third one down, insecure guest logon accounts. Ransomware got into every single one of those environments through an insecure guest account. And I cannot tell you how many times during the week I'm on a call with a partner or a customer, and we're looking at risk analytics in their environment, and they have insecure guest logon accounts enabled. It's a very simple change that can be done. Bitdefender will tell you what devices have insecure guest logon accounts. We'll also tell you in endpoint risk analytics exactly how to remediate that, whether that is changing group policy or whatever it is. Bitdefender will tell you exactly how to remediate that particular vulnerability. Very, very critical to help you and your customers reduce the attack surface, make it more difficult for these malicious actors to gain a foothold in your environment. This is kind of what it looks like. It's going to automatically prioritize the risks in your environment. You can drill into each of these areas. So you just click on the object, it will drill into that area. It will show you exactly what the risk is and then how to fix it. Really, really critical to help you to reduce your attack surface. So let's put this all together for you. If you think about phases of an attack, it basically follows the same methodology. You have basically, and I'm simplifying this here into 4 main categories. The first one is first contact. In other words, how does the attacker first get access to your customer's environment or to your partner's environment or to your RMM or whatever the case may be? That's what's called first contact. Then you have something gets executed. So the attacker executes code for the first time. We call that local execution. Then there's a lateral movement within the environment where the attacker tries to live in that environment, and we call that establishing presence. They move laterally, they try to survive reboots, they obfuscate themselves, they basically try to persist in the environment to do reconnaissance or other types of malicious activities. And then finally, you have what most people think about is malicious activity. That's kind of the big boom in the environment where people take notice, whether that is a ransomware attack or an exfiltration of data or something that occurs in the environment. Well, all of these phases of attack are really critical to have your endpoint defense be able to mitigate the risk in these areas. So when you think about Bitdefender protection technologies, Bitdefender technologies lay across this entire attack chain, and we have both detection security controls as well as protection security controls across the attack chain. Not only that, and this is what's really important to take away from today's presentation, is we not only live in the attack space, but we also live pre-attack. Pre-first contact, Bitdefender also has security controls that allow you to harden your environment against first contact, local execution, establishing presence, really help you to really reduce the attack surface, make it more difficult for malicious actors to gain a foothold in your customers' environments. And then we also have technologies that live beyond malicious activity. This is the area of detection and response, where we have built-in EDR, built-in 360-degree correlated view of the attack, so that your analyst can take action very quickly if something is malicious that's happening in your environment. So let's talk about this particular suite here as we think about Bitdefender Gravity Zone Security for MSPs. This is our suite in a nutshell. We have, starting in the middle, we have a single agent that we call BEST, that gets deployed in your environment a single time. So you deploy BEST onto an endpoint, whether that endpoint is a Windows, Mac, or Linux device. Single deployment, it auto updates itself. It can be deployed in a bunch of different ways. We integrate with Active Directory. We have what's called a relay technology. We integrate with most RMMs on the planet. So very, very simple to deploy. It is all managed by policy through a single management console. It is multi-tenant in nature, that we call Gravity Zone. Single console. It's got both local as well as cloud machine learning technologies. We introduced machine learning into our production application back in 2008, before next gen was even a marketing term. Bitdefender was already using machine learning and AI in our production product. We're going on year 13 of that machine learning and AI intellectual property, and now we give you the very advanced capabilities that you can tune our machine learning engine per threat vector. That's what we call hyper detect. I talked about that a little bit earlier. So that's kind of our architecture. Around the blue circle are all of our what we call our core functionality. So in other words, it's the base unit of cost for Bitdefender. Within that base unit of cost, you have network attack defense. That's our HIDS and HIPS technology. It prevents things like brute force password stealers, lateral movement, all the things that we've talked about regarding the network. That is covered by network attack defense. We have URL content filtering engine that goes along with that. So we have the ability through content control, the ability to monitor and inspect HTTP, HTTPS, RDP traffic as well, and be able to put some security controls around that. We've got DLP type security controls, application blacklisting, stuff like that. So that's all built into our base. We have anti-exploit defense. So if you're familiar with things like Malwarebytes and others that do kind of anti-exploit, that's built into our core engine. Risk analytics, I talked about that. That's our security assessment tool that helps you to reduce the attack surface. We monitor all processes. You can control devices, whether they be Bluetooth, USB, actually any IO device can be controlled by Bitdefender policy. And then we have your web filtering engine. All of that is part of our core offering that is kind of your base unit of cost. Then we have extended functionality. We call these add-ons, and they are in the area of advanced threat security. I talked about that. That's your HyperDetect and Sandbox Analyzer. We've got built-in EDR. We've got built-in full disk encryption. This is integrated BitLocker and FileVault. We store the key within Gravity Zone, so you don't have to manage encryption with sticky notes and people forgetting their passwords, things like that. We've got an email security gateway product, so you can redirect your mail to Bitdefender. We'll scan that mail, anti-spam, anti-malware, business email compromise, security, all of that's built in to our email security. We've got patch management, and we've got security for virtualized environments. So if you've got a VDI environment or some type of very dense virtual environment where you need to offload the scanning of those virtual machines onto a dedicated scan host, all of this is managed from a single console, single agent deployment, very simply managed. When you think about Bitdefender, we're not really a marketing company, to be honest with you. Over half of our employees are engineers by trade. So we are growing by word of mouth, but the industry is starting to take notice. I love the Forrester quote, the biggest EDR vendor you haven't considered, but probably should have. Bitdefender always wins awards for, AV comparisons and things like that. We just, our product is really efficient. It's very effective in preventing advanced malware, something that you should take a look at here in the near future. So when you think about Gravity Zone in a nutshell, I think about those three areas that we talked about. Protection and the prevention layer. Bitdefender has the world's most effective prevention layer. Those are your automated security controls that we've been talking about. You couple that with very low overhead detection and response platform that's integrated with all of those prevention security controls. And then you also have in the same solution an ability to manage your environment's risk by using risk analytics. Really helps you to continuously assess your risk and reduce the attack surface in your environment. That's kind of Bitdefender Gravity Zone in a nutshell. I hope you've enjoyed this, and thanks for your attention. Thanks for listening, and appreciate any questions that you might have. Love to answer some questions for you. Are there any questions in the chat?
Not at the moment, Michael.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, great.
Any common questions you may get, Michael, that
Sure.
may be relevant?
Let me think. Common questions. I would say, well, we get questions as far as integration. So integration into various platforms. So Gravity Zone is a completely API, RESTful API driven platform. So you can interact with it via API calls. So we integrate really well with various platforms. I would say we get some questions regarding kind of roadmap items and where we're investing. And I would say we're investing definitely in the EDR, XDR space. We're making more investments in the risk analytics space for security hardening. We're always staying on top of the prevention layer. That's kind of our bread and butter kind of security controls. So we get some questions regarding that. But those are some areas of investment for us. We're also, if you've seen some recent announcements, we're also in the container space now. So if you've got containerized applications, Bitdefender can auto-discover those containerized applications and put some security controls around those. Those are all managed in the same Gravity Zone policy, the same Gravity Zone environment that your on-premise or your cloud-based applications are being hosted. So that's some of the areas that we are that we're investing in.
Okay. I think we.
I see one. Okay, so a couple of questions. I think I just saw it come up in the chat. So, what's the best way to ensure EDR is configured correctly? Fantastic question. EDR needs to be enabled in 3 sections for it to operate. The first section is in the company section. So when you decide to enable EDR in a company, in the company section or the company tab, down at the bottom of that company, there are the add-ons, and you need to make sure that EDR is ticked as an add-on for that company. That's the first section. The second area is in the package or on the client itself. So in the package, you need to enable the EDR sensor to make sure that's enabled on the client. If you've already deployed into an environment and you need to enable it on the client, all you have to do is do what's called a reconfigure client task and enable that on the client. We call that the best agent. So Bitdefender Endpoint Security Tools is what BEST stands for. So you enable it on the client. And the third area is the incident sensor in the policy. That is EDR. So great question there. So make sure you have it enabled in all 3 of those. Second question, who are our biggest competitors? I would say it depends on the space. So if you think about Bitdefender, we operate in the traditional endpoint security space. So we have competitors there. We operate in the risk reduction space. So we have competitors there. And we operate in the EDR space as well as the MDR space, so managed detection and response. So Bitdefender also has its own SOC services that are available. So you've got SOC services, MDR space. We've got competitors there. We've got competitors in the EDR space. And so we've got lots of competitors that we deal with. I would say where Bitdefender really shines in that is we're designed for environments that really don't have very many security specialists, or maybe you don't even have security specialists. Bitdefender's kind of known for guided security actions. So we really help your human resources to know exactly what to do in a specific given situation, and so we really shine there. Any other questions that you see coming in? I don't see any other in the chat.
So just one, Michael. So
Sure.
the Bitdefender EDR standalone with
Oh, yes.
setting that up with other solutions.
Yeah, great question. So EDR standalone. So about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, Bitdefender Product Management said, "Hey, we've got a fantastic EDR product." And at the time, EDR it required our prevention agent to be resident on the box, and so Product Management basically said, "Hey, there's an opportunity here. What if a customer or partner wants to keep their endpoint solution, endpoint security solution, and kind of layer Bitdefender EDR alongside that particular endpoint security solution?" So that's the genesis of the EDR standalone product. That product is deployed. It has an agent associated with it. It's managed out of the same Gravity Zone environment that our full-featured product is managed. You have those 3 areas that I talked about where you have to enable that functionality. You have to enable EDR standalone in the company, the client, as well as the policy. So the same thing is true there. The difference between the 2 products is the EDR standalone can exist, and this is why they called it standalone, is it doesn't have any integrations into, let's say, a Webroot or a Symantec or a McAfee or any other type of endpoint solution, but you get the EDR and detection visibilities and some of the response capabilities that you would get out of full-featured Bitdefender. So yeah, that's a great solution. It got released a little bit earlier this year, and what's interesting about it, what I've seen, is that partners are using it kind of as a second set of eyes in customers' environments where they may not fully trust their endpoint solution, and they kind of want to get a little bit more visibility and a little bit more ability to respond to various incidents. And so that's where we're seeing the EDR standalone get deployed. And the other thing about EDR standalone is, if in the future you want to upgrade between EDR standalone and full-featured Bitdefender Gravity Zone, it's very, very simple. It's a simple reconfiguration of the client, and you can go from EDR standalone to our full-featured agent, which is fantastic. So yeah, great question.
And it'll work with, that doesn't matter what vendor.
Doesn't matter.
Vendor.
The only, good question. So the only vendor that it will not work with is actually the Bitdefender SDK environments. So Bitdefender has a very large OEM business, and so we are embedded into a lot of security products around the world. So if there is Bitdefender SDK solution on the environment, you can't use Bitdefender EDR. It has to be another vendor other than Bitdefender on the endpoint. Yeah, good question.
There's a license question, Michael, that's come in. I don't know if you can read that on your screen there.
Let's see. I cannot add EDR to a nonprofit license of Gravity Zone. It wasn't possible to order from connecting up. I've been told it's not possible from a base product. Can I add it? I tried in the PAN portal, but it won't add. Let me add. Okay, so the so this is a good question. So to be able to add EDR has to be added to your what we call your parent tenant within Gravity Zone. So let's say that I had a parent tenant. My company is called ABC Security. I'm just making stuff up. So ABC Security, someone has to enable ABC Security to have EDR. So it has to be enabled on my company first before I can enable it on my customer accounts that are part of my organizational structure. So it sounds like if you don't have the option for EDR, that means that your specific parent tenant, your company, does not have EDR enabled on it. So you need to figure out a way through distribution or through some sort of mechanism to enable that EDR functionality at the parent level, and then you'll be able to enable it at any of your sub-company level. So I hope that answers that particular question. Good question. So it says I can add MSP, Gravity Zone monthly clients. Just not, maybe there's some license limitation with nonprofits that I'm not aware of. I'm not the licensing expert, but that's a interesting, I've never run into that before. So maybe you just can't do it for nonprofits for some reason. I'm not sure why. Any other questions? Good questions.
I think that maybe there's no more questions in the question center that I can see. Don't think, is there anything else, Michael, that you wanted to add or before we start the wrap up?
No, not. I just want to say I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for listening. I hope I hope at least sparked some interest in just thinking about, endpoint security in a little bit different way that you have before, and definitely reach out to your blue chip partners there if you want any information regarding Bitdefender Gravity Zone, or to create a trial account for you, or whatever your next steps might be. I really appreciate your guys' time, and just want to wish you, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Michael, and thank you for your insightful presentation. I'll just turn my camera on. Yeah, I'm sure all of us will have some really good takeaways from today on how Bitdefender can build, obviously the pre-prevention and the pre-attacks, as you mentioned, and the detection and response, and obviously the risk management that Bitdefender can help all round with. And the big thing at the end, we're obviously talking about EDR, and if there's a vendor that it will work standalone, even to add that extra layer, as you said, that extra set of eyes.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, so and also on behalf of Blue Chip and Bitdefender, a big thank you to all for attending and sparing your valuable time to be with us today. Also, before we conclude, there for 30 lucky attendees, we'll be notifying and sending them out a $20 Amazon voucher for you to spend. And on the screen, if you're not sure, or just in case you're not sure how to reach Blue Chip, the details are there. But we'll also be sending out after the webinar, we'll be sending up a follow-up email to check in to see how you like the webinar, but also how we can look to have further discussions with you around your cybersecurity posture with using Bitdefender. And as Michael said, the team, just reach out to anyone of the Blue Chip team that you deal with, or in your local state or office. So with that, I'm probably going to call a close to the webinar, and wish everyone a good rest of the day. So thank you, everyone.
Cheers. Take care.
Thank you.